Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind of Sai Marie. Today, we are looking at the roots of resilience and the invisible architecture of our foundations, specifically the sensory layers that shape our memories, our emotions, and the spaces where we connect. My guest today has unlocked a deeply powerful yet frequently overlooked lens for understanding how we experience the world around us. Tiffany Rose Goodyear is an innovative experience designer and the brilliant founder of Scentex. She is here to discuss how fragrance serves as a profound tool for designing unforgettable experiences, shaping human connection, and grounding us in an increasingly digital age. Tiffany, it's an absolute pleasure to have you in the studio today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sai. It is truly my honor. I love talking about this and I love inviting people to smell their environments more often and this gets us there. So thank you again.
So, you've dedicated your career to a medium that many people take for granted, the power of scent to make an environment truly sticky and unforgettable. What was the breaking point or the exact realization in your journey that made you want to dive completely into this invisible canvas?
Up a little bit. My philosophy is my undergraduate, so I knew I was going to go to grad school at some point. I studied advertising management for grad school, stumbled upon a reluctant entrepreneurship of a cupcake shop in Denver, Colorado. And because I had zero culinary background, what we focused on was telling branded stories through desserts. And I really got to see how touch, taste, and smell as a mode of communication can be really effective. And advertising 15 years ago and today is mostly about audiovisual. So it was my experience with branded desserts and the power to see the connection of storytelling when somebody put something in their mouths and had a sensory experience that was so powerful. That's when I leaned into scent. Scent being the least attention to sensory receptor in the event world. So I started scenting spaces and I was kind of, doing the work, doing some research and development. And that is how I developed a company. I believe there's a need for it. And my personal manifesto is to get scent on the event checklist. Because while it doesn't make sense all the time to strategically use it, it should at least be considered.
So, we recently touched on how a community can feel deeply immersive, and scent seems to be like that's a tool for that. Why do you think this idea of intentional sensory design resonates so deeply with people in today's fast paced and high stress cultural climate?
I think there's a lot of miseducation and misunderstanding of scent in itself. So we're poised as a culture not to know its impact. But scent is what makes us human. We are human beings because we smell. We are mammals because we have mammary glands, and humans smell because that is what makes them mammals. And so sharing scented experiences connect us to both ourselves and our own body, but they connect us to each other. Many cultures throughout history have used scent to establish rituals and to establish, a sense of place and community using scent. It connects us to ourselves and it connects us to each other. It is what makes us human, and we need that to continue to be human in a world that is quickly shifting to AI.
So, you focus heavily on using fragrance to foster authentic, real world connection. How do you design a scent profile for an environment that helps people drop their guards and find emotional clarity without overwhelming the space itself?
Great question. This is the reason I developed Scentex as an event service company. There are suppliers that will sell scent machines and fragrance oil. That is their business model. They will sell that all the live long day. The difference between them and what we do, I always compare us to an AV company or a caterer or a design company, a florist, a production company. They are there on site orchestrating the experience live with the guests. And what we do in order to curate that experience during the event is ensure that it is neither underwhelming or overwhelming. And there are decisions that have to be made in real time based on airflow, which can be affected by the temperature inside of the room, the temperature outside of the room, the movement of the guests, which doors are open, which doors are closing, how things are moving in the space, are guests moving about, are they sitting down? And so that's how we execute in real time. And the process to get there is we have a a discovery call with our clients to get an idea of their event. What are all of their event details? I always think of us as the sprinkles on the icing on the cake. You need the foundation for the event. You need a guest list, you need a time, you need a place. Usually you need food. I think that frosting is the decor and the AV and the music and all of the beautiful details that people think about most often when creating an event. And we are that extra sensory experience that ties it all together that doesn't, it's not necessary for a cupcake to have sprinkles, but boy, does it come to life. And so our process is to understand the foundation of the event, the decisions that have already been made. So the food that's been chosen, the timeline, the cadence of the event, how guests are going to move through the space, the story in which they want to tell. We do a lot of corporate work. And so we want to tell that branded story along with all the other elements with scent. We are the experts we have thousands of fragrance materials in our scent lab. So we take what they've told us and we curate custom fragrance options based on that information, and then we ship them samples and we start working from there of what it actually smells like.
In a world that constantly pulls our attention away into our virtual spaces, your work forces people to pivot back to a raw physical awareness. Based on your experience, what do you think is the hardest thing for a modern person to reclaim once they've lost touch with their physical surroundings and presence?
I think the most difficult thing for humans to reclaim with regard to getting back in touch with their senses is realizing that every space they've ever walked into has a scent, has a fragrance. In our culture, we think of scent in relationship to personal products, which is where perfume would lie, or cleaning products. But there's a world outside of that. We're not taught how to smell. We did art. I remember doing art class. I did PE. I did music class and got to play the xylophone. We learned early on how to use most of our senses, but nobody taught us how to use smell. So I think just the awareness of our noses and our ability to smell in a non food related way helps us open our minds to the possibility of smelling and its importance. I think that one of the reasons why scent marketing is so powerful now, and we don't do scent marketing per se, but it's because it is an introduction to a branded scented experience. It's a very intentional public sharing of a smell that didn't exist 20 years ago. So when we walk into a luxury hotel, I would say they do it the best outside of Abercrombie and Fitch in the 90s. You know where you are. And so they're creating the invitation to smell in a space, and it's very strategic. So I think more spaces that have more strategic smell, we begin to understand that spaces in general are scented and they can be used strategically to tell a story. And I think both smelling these spaces now that they exist, being invited to smell, and being in a culture that pays more attention to smell now than it did pre COVID because people experienced, the word is escaping me, anosmia for the first time. Culturally, maybe since the Spanish flu, I'm not sure if that was one of the symptoms, we said we can't smell as a society. And there were articles written about it. And there's a lot of money that went into the science and medicine of smelling so that we became aware of it. And people that lose their sense of smell are more likely to commit suicide than people that use their other senses. We don't realize how powerful and important it is. And I think talking to people like you, Sai, and getting that education and being invited to smell things is what closes the gap between a world where we're not taught or invited to smell and the world where that can be a little bit more beautiful because we can experience it more deeply.
So, we talk a lot about reclaiming empowerment on this show. In your line of work, empowerment looks like an awakening to the hidden signals around us, forcing us to notice how our surroundings affect our mental state. What can listeners learn from the quiet resilience of someone who deliberately curates their personal environment to protect their peace before burnout sets in?
Think that what can be learned through my work, again, is knowing that you have this very, very powerful tool that can help you inform your life and your experiences, and you can use it strategically. There's a lot of research on aromatherapy. We don't particularly lean into aromatherapy from a product perspective. Aromatherapy usually relies on essential oils that you can both put on your skin and drink. In the fine fragrance industry, which we lean into for sustainability and environmental reasons, there are both synthetic and organic ingredients. But regardless, using those principles of top note, middle note, and base note, notes are tiny molecules. They're enlivening. They're like citrus and mint and eucalyptus. You smell them and you wake up. Things like lavender. Lavender is the most studied fragrance material on the planet. It is scientifically proven that it calms you down. And vanilla, which is a base note, is the most widely recognized favorite smell through all cultures all over the planet. You can use these principles and the aroma therapy principles and choose fragrances that can change your mood. You can light a candle at night that has a lot of big, heavy bass notes. They make you feel good, like chocolate and leather and tobacco. Again, vanilla is a bass note. Light a candle, have a glass of wine, and relax. That can affect your mental state, your mood, your experience. And you can also be empowered to use it when you're studying. There are some studies about smelling mint and those top tiny notes, those little tiny molecules that come and go and are very fleeting. They do help our brains perk up a bit. So, studying while smelling a top note can increase recollection. So, there is a world where you can use it as a tool in order to affect your life.
I love that. So, building an industry leading brand like Scentex while balancing the deep science of olfactory psychology with the artistic demands of luxury experience design is an incredible feat. What was the biggest level up you had to experience as an entrepreneur to master both the deep emotional philosophy of scent and the practical execution of massive event installations?
Well, Sai, I'm still figuring that out because I think as a business person, I think sometimes I lose sight of the bottom line, and investors don't like that. However, since I am my only funder at the moment, I only have myself to please. Hard time balancing the business mind with the education mind. It is a gift that I get to go on podcasts like yours and get on stages with a microphone and educate and invite people to use their noses in our interactive experiences. People are funny about scent. Their body language when we invite them to smell, they're kind of like they're curious, but they're a little apprehensive. So I think education is a huge part of what we do in that we are the only company that does exactly what we do. Educating a population doesn't necessarily drive business. So my own personal challenge is do I balance both? I care deeply about the power of fragrance. I feel like I wasn't a there's a word a fragranceophile before I started down this path, and for me it was all about building a perfect experience. So in my mind, of course, you would have to think about scent. And now we do, and I think it is growing. And I think the scent marketing that I mentioned earlier really was introduces us to public smelling in again in the 2020s. So I think we are, and COVID helped. So our world for with natural forces sort of started thinking about scent. I think it's working for luxury hotels really, really well. And I think for me, the challenge is to say, okay, I know about this awesome thing that you can use. You have it. You were born with it. It was the first sensory receptor to develop in utero. And I myself have never carried a child, but oftentimes women that are with child smell more strongly. It's not because their volume turned up in their brain. It's because they have two olfactory systems in one body. Is mind blowing to me. So for me, it's about trying to make a very successful business and continuing to experience the joy I get from educating people about how to connect with themselves and the world more deeply just by inhaling through their nose.
So, your work deals heavily with leadership under fire when it comes to turning a sterile corporate space into something that feels deeply human. When a gathering or an environment feels cold or disconnected, does the role of an experienced designer change from an analytical observer to an active, instinctual director of human energy?
I would say my experience in the corporate events industry is such that done talks for event planners where I asked how many experienced creators were in the room and nobody raised their hand. And I thought, am I in the wrong talk? Are you, is this a room full of accountants? I mean, I can still I can still sell you on the importance of scent, but that's a different talk. I think people that have been in corporate planning for a long time sometimes lose the light and the design, the magic of events. And to no fault of their own, budgets are being cut. It's easier to do the same event year over year. Sometimes the decision makers in the C-suite, everybody says they want to do something new and exciting. Not everybody wants to actually think about it or pay for it. So I think it's a challenge. I think because any industry sort of has its challenges, but again, the event industry is what I've seen this in. I think new and up and coming and younger event designers are more open to the idea of really thinking about their events as canvases for human experiences. But unfortunately, they're not working at the companies that could have the budget for us. So I think I'm a little lost as to the question that I'm answering, but I think that what you were saying is like how how do how do experience creators in the corporate world like open their minds to something like scent? And I would say the first thing to do is invite them to use their nose. We send scent samples out. We talk about it. We have a newsletter. Again, just to kind of think about it. And if they truly want to do something unique and connect with their audience a little bit more deeply, usually they're open to a conversation with us. And that is where it begins. But I think there's a lot of lag in the industry for true creativity and innovation because people don't want to spend money on that.
If you could give one piece of practical advice to any individual or family currently feeling overwhelmed by the chaotic, noisy world on how to use scent to restore comfort to their home, what would that be?
I would say for anybody looking to have a moment, I think it's about creating space. I mean, this is what events are too, whether it's 132,000 square feet, which we have been challenged with, or a bedroom or you're outside your garden, anywhere in your home to find peace from the chaos that reigns outside and creating that space intentionally. And I think it's almost asking somebody to reduce stimuli, right? Like turn off the podcast, turn off the TV, shut your computer, breathe. Breathe more, get your body comfortable, feel your body from your toes to your kneecaps to your armpits to the space behind your eyes. Sit in your body. And if you want to visit this space and your body and a little bit of peace more frequently, light a candle that brings you joy. Find a reed diffuser, which was what we do to scent spaces as part of our services, and use that tool repeatedly and that scent repeatedly. So the next time you smell that scent in chaos, your brain goes back to the piece that you created. That's what I would recommend. Do I do that myself? A little bit, but not often enough. I don't scent my home because I smell so much all day long. I need sort of like a white space of smell to reset my nose from work so I'm more effective when like intentionally smelling. I create that same space that I described just without scent because for me, no scent is more effective, but for probably 99.9% of the population, curating that piece using scent is in their benefit.
If your work were a bridge between the sterile high tech deceptions of modern life and the ultimate reality of authentic human healing, what is the one virtue or truth, perhaps drawing from your mission of making the invisible visible, that you hope people will take across with them on that bridge?
I love your questions. Will you repeat that for me? Because I want to be good on this one.
So basically, I'm asking what is the one virtue of or truth that you would want people to carry with them across the bridge about your work and, building that bridge to kind of close that gap between the sterile high tech deception of modern life and the reality of authentic human healing, through olfactory and sensory and Scentex and all these experiences that you've had.
It is remembering that you have a nose in the middle of your face that invites you to smell all day long, every day during the waking hours. And it can be a tool both to spot danger. Our noses are so important. If there's a chemical in the air or if there's a fire, our noses alert us first. It's a very important tool from that aspect, but it can also be used in order to connect again to our bodies, to our nervous systems. I think with artificial intelligence, and I use it as much as anybody else. In fact, I joke all the time that I date ChatGPT is my boyfriend, and that we're expecting many agents in our future. Because I think as another tool, and it's interesting and fascinating, and it uses our knowledge to develop its knowledge. So I think it is a useful tool. But the more we start dating for real, I joke about it, but dating our chat GPTs or having relationships that cause our human relationships to diminish. And if we're using it in a way that takes us so far out of our bodies and our realities, it is to our detriment. And so, remembering that you are a human being on this planet in this time having this experience, and that you have five main sensory receptors, one being scent, that is the most forgotten, you have the power to reconnect to yourself, to the people around you, to the world around you. When you go on a walk, smell. When you walk into a room, smell. When you hug somebody you love, smell them, take them in, because that moment, that is what is so beautiful about life, sharing each other and sharing each other's bodies. And we get to do that through scent. And I guess if we don't do it, we too become robotic, and we too become less human. And I think my work is more important and powerful than ever to serve as that single virtue you asked for, as a reminder, so that we can remember who we are.
Tiffany, thank you for sharing your vision, your sensory insight, and your incredible craft with us today. It's been a profound journey into the heart of what it takes to design spaces where we can truly feel present, connect, and thrive.
Thank you so much for having me. And
To everyone listening, go check out Tiffany Rose Goodyear's incredible work at Scentex. It is a powerful exploration of memory, connection, and sensory intentionality. And I will have a link to it in the show description notes so you can easily navigate over there. As always, remember, the mind is the most important story that we'll ever tell. Thank you for listening to The Mind of Sai Marie.